my friends. I'm Rick. This is your seat at the table. Welcome to my living room. This is a Friday morning, and the wife's running out to the food pantry with our neighbor lady. Yeah, we have to go to the food pantry every couple of weeks. That's what it is. Anyway, I was out working late last night and been watching a number of videos, and one of the guys I subscribe to and have conversations with on a rare occasion, but I really enjoy his stuff, is fellow's named Ivan Mike 1968. And so this is what we call welcome to, breakfast with the fat man. I'm kind of finishing up a homemade sausage McMuffin. Anyway, he was talking something briefly in his commentary kind of struck a chord with me. And I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't remember the exact words for it. I'm not hunting it down. But he said the traditional GMs railroad from the beginning. And that's something that's very true. We don't consider that very often. So let's consider a more advanced Dungeons and Dragons or advanced game narrator or game master perspective. How do you get away from spending hours and hours and hours carefully crafting the adventures and the scenarios that your friends and associates will go through at the table? And this is traditional traditional gaming from the RPG's perspective. This has been old school since the beginning. You have one individual who creates or concocts the sandbox that you're going to play in, and not necessarily directs the play, but lays out the scenario that the players then make their choices in. In many ways, there are some people that will believe, and they're not incorrect, that is railroading at the base level. And it's hard to say, well, we can't do that, we got to do this, without really taking a step back from that and thinking, how do we get away with it? Because there's a small group of people that's been around for 40 or 50 years. This philosophy, that's kind of one of the things that amuses me in some ways and annoys me in others, is how every so many years somebody come up with this new way of playing something or new way of doing things. Rules light is a big favorite for the last 4 or 5 years, or 4 or 5 years ago was a big subject that come along, getting away from all the heavy rule sets and the need to keep flipping back and forth and mechanics and things like this, to the desire for total immersion, four-dimension play or theater of the mind, where nobody asks anything out of character ever at the table. The minute you sit down and the session starts, all the narrator does is narrate the setting, the players play. And the players dictate what things are going to do, how they're going to do it. And they do so from the perspective of the characters that they're representing, right? So this is very complex state, a level of play for many people. You can learn this early on and learn to become part of this from the ground up, but by avoiding learning the standard railroading style of playing games, especially running them. So this is always a challenge. We get this topic of the open sandbox. This is actually fairly reasonably new. About 20 years ago, people started talking about the open environments. In big part, the video game industry was striving for and still striving for. This is where you can sit down in your favorite game and basically go any direction you want and do anything you want and interact with anything there as you want to do so. That's fine if you have a group of people who know what they want to do. It's not so easy when you have some players sit down, especially new players or a new group of people who are not used to working together, who have no idea what it is they want to achieve. This is where the game master or the narrator steps in the traditional role and says, I've established this is the role. We're going to go here to do this adventure and achieve this thing and get that MacGuffin, etc. The standard. You pull any module that I have on the shelf back here, any base back of most source books where they have a play aid or something like this. That's what they're doing, is giving you everything you need to do to sit down and play. So they've narrated to you. They have railroaded you into a very narrow box inside of a very large sandbox. How do we get around that? How do we avoid doing that? It's not always easy. And a lot of expectations fall on the shoulders of the person who chose to be the narrator or the game coordinator or the dungeon master, whatever you choose to call the phrase or the term. And this leads some expectations and many disappointments because some people expect certain levels of play, other people don't. Other people expect certain levels of guidance, other people don't want that guidance. Okay, you are the archetypical tavern. You guys start out at a tavern. Here you go. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to interact with? We give that total control over to the players in the complete immersion of a sandbox environment where they make the choices. Which is, we're back to what I just said. It's fine if, as long as you have players who understand that they want to play this way. More importantly, have an idea of what to do and how to go and where to go from there. And then they also have to understand that the narrator is literally narrating on the fly, shooting from the hip, because there's no prepared script, there's no prepared adventures, no prepared scenarios, no outline at all for any of this stuff. And that can be a real challenge. That is something more for advanced people than for noobs. I'm just saying it is. But it's not impossible for all layers to play this way. If you go back to most role-playing games, not all of them, but almost all of the old ones have what they call random encounter charts. Well, over the decades, random encounter charts people have had a love and hate relationship with them. Many people don't like them because they're literally random. Excuse me. So you're going through a dungeon and you're just randomly rolling things, and this happens and that encounters, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. And that's fine if you're doing a dungeon crawl, quote, a hack and slash, where the whole goal is just to go out and kill stuff and gather loot. It's the same thing in a city environment, although a city environment offers 100 times more opportunities for expanded play. But if you don't have any guys to giving any coordination for it, it's all up to the players to decide who, what, where, and why. Well, that can be a challenge too. One of my early on attempts at trying to operate a true sandbox was to allow the players to decide what kind of adventure they were going to do, where they wanted to go, what their basic goals were. And then from there, try to craft an encounter or scenarios or adventures to fulfill their desires and their wishes. In a way, that's still a form of railroading. I got a hair on my tongue. All these cats. Right? Excuse me. Maybe it's just me. Anyway. The downside or the challenge therein lies, how do we prevent the players from just becoming utterly bored? And are we still railroading? In many ways, that's still considered railroading light. This is where one individual is determining or deciding for the group, generally not a member of the player group, what, where, why, and how. Or at least the what, where, and why. So I thought, if we had random charts, like we have random encounters charts. Oh, but we do. Okay, so we could just toss a dice or have a player toss a dice and say, okay, this potentially would be something. The trick, in many ways, from a narrator perspective, in a more advanced-minded group or advanced-minded play style, would be to set the settings and have a broad settings. You're in a tavern, and there's a guy over here who's looking shady. There's a couple guys over here that are drunk off their butts. There's a woman over there that's fiddling with a bag full of something. There's a commotion out on the street, and there's a bunch of street urchins getting into a brawl or chasing some old man down the street. Perhaps your characters are walking around and you're randomly meeting together in a dark alley somewhere by accident and find themselves with a murder in front of them, a dead body of a local noble or something like this. And then the watch shows up. That's as far as you go from the narrator's perspective. At this point, it's up to the players to decide the who, what, where, and why, and how. More importantly, the how and how they pursue it. This isn't easy. It's very hard to be consistent in that sort of game style, but it can be very freeing. Very freeing. This is like this concept of no narrator at all. This is not new either. I'm sorry for those that think they had an epiphany. Now, you may have come up with a different title for it, or the basic concept, though, has been around since the late 70s. It has. This is where the players sit down at the table. There's no game master. But once again, you still have to have a sandbox to work from and basic narrative parameters. Because I've sat down at other people's table where they've tried something like this and it just becomes utter chaos or makes absolutely no sense. And then you risk players breaking up. This player decides to go do this, that one decides to do that, one doesn't do anything at all because they're not used to being asked to make the decisions for the group or for them, right? And this can become problematic too. You can overcome this, like I said, with a lot of open mind. You have to be open-minded about it and trial and error. It's just like the total immersion. When you really truly want to be the character in mindset at all times, that is a challenge. You have to be careful that you don't become over dramatic, over embellishment. How many of your decisions are you making based on what you think the rest of the group wants to be entertained with? It's a similar trap that a lot of game masters end up falling into, is trying to cater all the time to their players. And this can lead to the Monty Hall problem. This can become to the dearth of adventure problem. This could become a lot of different things. And I've seen it shortchange many game sessions, and I've seen it derail entire campaigns quickly because there's no direction and nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows what they want to do. It's a rare group of players that can sit down that all together, the whole group, that can act in concert independently of the narrator or the game master. So having a sit down with a game where you have no narrators, no game masters at all, are not impossible. It's not new. This is not a new thing. How you approach it the various recent ideas for it might be a bit new, but it's just the repackaging of an old way. Just how do we approach this in a modern term so it doesn't sound like we are railroading our players? I don't know that you can truly do this consistently for a long period of time. If you have a very select group of intimate players, what I mean by intimate is a group of the same people that you sit down and play with regularly, whether it's every weekend or once a month or 3 times a year, but you have the same group of players and you've been playing together for a long period of time, that you've established that intimacy of friends who understand what the other friend's needs, wants, and limitations are. As I was having a discussion in a different video for a Facebook channel, or my opinions anyway, I alluded to a friend of mine named Kenny. Kenny is a wonderful guy who loves to play dwarves, loves to play barbarians. In many ways, he's a big, bearded doofus. And I mean that with a lovable intent. Doofus is very aptly descriptive of Kenny. Kenny does not read very well. His comprehension for reading is horrific. Like I said, I watched him take 3 months to read the first chapter of a Dragonlance novel. I was trying to remember what the novel series, what series it was from, but it was a Dragonlance novel. He dearly wanted to love it because he loves dwarves and he wanted to read it, but he just couldn't get through it. He literally reads it word by word, sometimes spelling it out, stopping. So you see how jerky and how much that would break one's immersion. Now, I struggled with the idea of watching that way because when I read something, it's literally like watching a video or a movie. I read a novel, my imagination is vivid enough that I can follow everything and I can actually put myself in the room or in the scene that the book is portraying. Not everybody can do that. In many cases, I do it in color. And I can hear it, I can smell, because my imagination is very vivid when it comes to that. So mechanically wise, Kenny loved the books because he could read the books, he could understand the mechanics because they're short paragraphs with very specific goals, and he knows what he wants to do, and he just gets enough of that information to understand it. Over time, he absorbs this stuff, and it becomes harder for him to change additions. So when Dungeons & Dragons went from 3.5 to 4.0, he struggled with it. And he struggled with trying to understand or comprehend the changes, and most of it, he just fell back on what he knew. When he fit into the character of his dwarf or his barbarian, he became that character to the point where he acted like he was that person. And that's that deep level immersion, that theater of the mind that so many try to strive for. But anything out of that character, anything that required him to make a decision, would make him stumble. It's nothing against Kenny at all. It's nothing against Kenny at all. He just lacks the imagination. More importantly, he lacked the confidence to make the decisions, to make the mistakes and trial and error that many of us do in part of the games that we love and pursue. It's like your favorite video game. Are you the rare person that can sit down at a video game and play the entire thing perfectly? Or is it the whole point of most video games to stumble and try again, to go through and keep figuring out how to overcome this, that, and the other thing? This becomes a bigger challenge, of course, when you're dealing with a sandbox and it's an ever changing internal environment. Well, this is kind of what we're trying to go for at this more advanced style of play, in my opinion. And of course, this is just all my conjecture, going back to what Ivard said, a brief thing that Ivard said in one of his videos about the DM basically railroading from the start. And once again, I'm paraphrasing. That's not the exact words that Ivan used, and I apologize, Ivan, if you see the video. That was not my intent at all. It's something that it popped up in my brain and it started rolling around last night. It's been something I wanted to get out of my chest. So the idea is that we could set up a set of charts, for example, encounter in charts, but work from the narrator perspective. So instead of having random critters and humanoids and bad guys show up, we're going to have the random events occur. And Judges Guild, which I have back here on the very top shelf, one of the very oldest supplements for the Dungeons and Dragons brand, going way back to the 70s, is full of that. So this is not a new concept. There are literally entire chapters in the city books of all the stuff that can be going on around your characters as they're walking down the street. This is the sort of stuff that you just say, okay, I'm going to roll a d6, and while you standing outside your favorite tavern, a couple shady, dark-looking individuals push into the local greengrocer's place, and you hear a bunch of commotion going on inside. Meanwhile, over here, you see a young street urchin lifting the purse off of a fat merchant. Down here, you see where I'm getting at? You're going to give the multiple choices to the players to decide what they want to pursue. If they choose to not pursue any of that stuff, they move down the road to the next set trigger point, if you want to call it that, where you roll your d6 and throw 3 different other possible scenarios out. So at this point, are you railroading as a game master, as the narrator, or are you just providing opportunities for the players to make decisions upon? That's a thought. It's an option, an idea. It's not maybe for everybody, but then most things aren't. This is one of the. I want to be careful because I'm not trying to go off on a tirade or a tangent on this elitism that crops up in gaming from time to time. There are always people who are extremely dedicated to their style or their desire and their wishes, and under the guise, intentionally or unintentionally, of trying to help other people see their viewpoint, perhaps they're railroading them into their viewpoint at the same time. It's my game table. We're going to run this the way I want to run it, which is the traditional railroading from game masters from day one. Gary Gygax talked about this on occasion. I read a number of articles way back in the day and watched a couple of videos, interviews that he had done that talked about, game master license. And a lot of stuff that we do today is nothing compared to what the original visions were, which is to be expected. Things evolve, things change, things become far more sophisticated than they used to be. This is kind of why some people, that never played the OSR, the old school stuff, start picking up our old school book systems or new renditions of the old style, and are amazed by how free many of these things seem. Right? Maybe I'm not, getting across my thoughts so well as the subject as I would like, In my mind is, can you play at the table and have spontaneity and player license to avoid being railroaded in any form whatsoever, to have that free table? Can you actually sit down as a group of players without a narrator at all and play? Yes, absolutely you can. The mechanics have been there since the 70s. They're there. Now, they may have been evolved out over time because there were more and more people wanted more and more options, and they wanted to have more depth and more detail and more. This is where the crunch really came from. When you look at even the newest editions of most role-playing games are built on the backs of all this other stuff, all these other experiences. Over decades, people have learned what worked, what didn't work, what worked for them, didn't always work for somebody else. And so when you get somebody like myself who believes I have a better way of doing something, or I want to do something completely different, and I have the dedication of the wherewithal to create a new system, is one of the reasons we come up with new systems, why we get introduced to new systems on a yearly basis. If you consider that 4 or 5 game systems come out on average every couple of years, over 40 odd years, over 50 years, that's a lot. It's a staggering amount. There's a staggering amount of game systems that have come, saw a little bit of light, and died. And we see it today now. A lot of indies. There's a whole, Bloat Games. I don't own any of. I have one of his micro games that Eric Bloat put out. Bloat Games put out some pretty good stuff. His Deities and Demigorgons or something like that is his line stuff. But this is his version of Dungeons and Dragons. At least that's how I understand it. And he decided he wanted to bring his version of the game to life. So he did. And through a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, it's been fairly successful. And now he has a nice little indie game company going. He does Kickstarters all the time and so on and so forth. This is not something everybody can do. And a lot of people don't want to do this. And why would you? That's just a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of, I know firsthand because I'm in the process of trying to digitize my would-be game, my Interstellar Frontiers game, which is a solo sci-fi world builder that has role-playing options available to it. You could sit down with players and play a RPG version of this using the basic rules that are there. But 100 years ago, 15 years ago, when I had this all on a disc and on an older system, and the system died at the end of the day. I lost everything except the physically printed versions. And so trying to go back and replicate the hundreds of little charts and mini charts and do so in a way that's updated and refined. This would be my 6.0 version of this would-be game, and it's like pulling teeth some days. I literally, you listen to me cry. No, listen, the housekeeping thing. Another thing that I picked up from Ivan. I literally work myself insane. I worked yesterday for 3.5 hours in the morning, and then I worked 9 hours last night. I didn't get home till after almost 1 in the morning, right? And this is normal for me. So sometimes I'm literally dead all weekend. I'm just getting through the day because I got to do whatever I got to do to get my hours. I worked 4 days, and I got 42 hours. 4 days. Last week I worked 4 days and had 58. So I mean, some days I'm just too exhausted to do anything. And then I have to work with my home environment. I have this piece of quiet right now because I love my wife, but she has severe epilepsy. Her epilepsy causes her to be sometimes antisocial in ways that she didn't used to be. So having a big environment group, she gets overly stimulated and overly excited sometimes, and that can be detrimental too. So just sitting here doing a video, she would not accept me doing a video with her sitting 5 feet away because this is a small living room. I mean, my couch is a short couch, one of them love seat kind of couches because our living room's that small because we have so much junk or tchotchkes or stuff that we've collected. And she absolutely has never had a passion for this stuff at all because she has the lack of I don't want to say the lack of imagination. She has the lack of wherewithal, but she doesn't read very much. She doesn't. She's in many ways she's like Kenny, except she has no passion for any of this at all. Her passion lays in the other stuff, the types of artwork she loves to do, and flowering, her gardens and things like this, which is fun. But creating videos sometimes can be a challenge, and creating good videos is damn near impossible because I don't have the luxury of spending 4 or 5 hours editing things and coming back, and even so, I haven't bothered to learn any of that stuff. So in a way, a lot of my video games are shot from the hip, and it's obvious. You can see that from my videos, just how they're shot from the hip. So this creation system, like for my game, I was able to get 2 more pages typed up yesterday morning. I got all my paperwork and stuff done. I actually did a video for Facebook for a Facebook group that's revolving around some stuff that we're talking about, and game related philosophy, if you want. And then I went in and I did my paperwork and I got it done, and I found myself just doing this. And I had the office to myself, so I brought my little sitting up here, the little plastic sack that's got my only hard copy of my game. Now, since years ago, after I was able to get a position to have a new computer that I could trust for a while, this one's starting to get dodgy, and I'm scared of it. To be honest, I keep trying to save as much stuff as I can on thumb drives, but I can't keep everything, and I'm worried because I keep hearing the fan run louder. So I'm hoping sometime next year to maybe buy another one. It's just, is what it is. Yeah, Frankie? No, there's no room up here for you. So, see, now I start losing my train of thought because I'm getting old, right? Getting a couple pages at a time. It could take me literally years to get this stuff and get it converted. And I gave up a long time ago of ever seeing any money for it. I'm not Eric Bloat, and I never will be Eric Bloat, and I don't have the weather on like he did to achieve what he's done. And I'm ecstatic for the man. He's living the dream that many of us would love to see or be in. That doesn't change my love and passion for things. So it's like the open game system. We're coming back for full circle on this because I have a bad habit of rambling off on the tangents. The idea of not having a railroad, or i.e. not crafting and scripting the game for your players, is not new. But it's not simple or easy either. It takes dedication and understanding and an open mind. Try doing this sometime. Try doing it. I don't know if you can find charts on the internet. I'm sure if you look, you might. But you can always create your own too. You can make your own city encounters and country encounters. Well, the party is meandering down a woodland path, and they hear a cry in the distance over here. They hear some weird banging going off over that way. They see a flinting glimpse of something in the trees off to the side of the road. What do you want to do? Multiple choice options. And the players dictate the play. All the narrator is doing is providing the options. Just a thought, just an idea. Anyway, this was Breakfast with the Fat Man, me, and of course, little Frankie here. I got Mama laying up over here, Sissy's over there, Squeaky's over there, Doofus is laying in this chair, Doofus is laying on the floor over there, Cece's laying in this chair, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. And number 7's in the other room. That's Missy. She's the one I've been doing, and we see in my videos a lot lately. She's not quite ready to be left out with the rest of the cats all the time. And then we don't really want her running out the door. I mean, we went through a lot of effort to save her life. The last thing I want to do is to see her escape, in a lot of ways. And then we're not even talking about, we got Cuddles, and we got Mittens, and we got Lily, and we got Thumper, and we got Calico out there in the garage. They're in the garage and above over the house. Because once again, those were strays that were living out of the street in the yard 2 years ago, came in their garage last winter. And if I open the door today, they'll run outside, and then my wife will have a terror. But we are doing our level best. They're all healthy. They're all fat, as healthy as they can be. I mean, we don't have money for vets. I don't have money to go to doctors half the time. That's a damn sad thing. I mean, we didn't adopt them to be mean to them, but they're all well fed. I probably spend 50, $60 a week in cat food alone. That's not an exaggeration. Anyway, welcome to Iowa in our 20-minute goodbyes. Till next time, I'm Rick. This is Little Frankie and the rest of the Clouder. You guys think about that for a minute. The next time you really want to run a game, if you're the game master, perhaps just be the option, not the conductor. Till next time.
It just irritates me to no end.